ATP is an energy-rich molecule that consists of one adenosine molecule bonded to 3 phosphate molecules. Immediate energy is released when the last phosphate is chemically broken, forming the molecule ADP, adenosine diphosphate. Due to the breaking of this bond, energy is made available for muscular contraction. As the body has approximately 2 seconds of maximal exercise before depletion of ATP, it is required to resynthesize through the utilization of energy substrates and food energy. 3 energy systems are required as mechanisms for resynthesizing ATP. Phosphocreatine is used as energy substrate to resynthesize ATP during maximal intensity exercise conditions lasting 0 to 10 seconds, which is the ATP-CP system. The lactic acid system becomes predominant after phosphocreatine has been depleted, utilizing glycogen as the energy substrate to resynthesize ATP for repeated high-intensity efforts for approximately 10 seconds to 2 minutes. The aerobic energy system becomes dominant when prolonged submaximal exercise exceeding 2 minutes, delivering oxygen to active skeletal muscles for resynthesis of ATP through the breakdown of carbohydrates and fats. All 3 energy systems are present at one time. Intensity and duration determine which is predominant. The middle position in touch football is responsible for rocking the ball upfield and is the instigator of attacking phases. Prior to the game, Norman works aerobically, having sufficient oxygen available to meet the energy requirements due to the submaximal nature of the activity. Following the initial tap taken, which initiates the start of the game, there is an immediate increase in exercise intensity, shifting to anaerobic pathways within an oxygen deficit phase. In this example, following the commencement of the touch football game, Norman is shooting off of the defensive line to make multiple touches, with the ATP-CP system producing 90% of ATP resynthesis, with the lactic acid system and aerobic system supporting with 5% contribution each. As seen in the next video, Norman, along with the middle and links, begins to drive the ball forward with pace and intensity when in possession. This is another of Norman working predominantly under ATP-CP conditions with phosphocreatine, the energy substrate, to resynthesize the ATP molecule for energy. In the data profile, Norman achieved 8 passes and 12 roll balls within the first half of the game at a high intensity nature of those efforts. Leading up to the approximate 6-second mark of the phase, as the ball has been driven up the field, phosphocreatine stores have been depleted with insufficient recovery time to replenish. To resynthesize and rebuild the ATP molecules, lactic acid and ATP-CP system work in conjunction to do approximately 45% contribution each. The aerobic system still performs in the background at an approximate 10%. Shifting into line attack, the ongoing offensive efforts have required Norman to repeatedly work at a high intensity. He continues working under anaerobic pathways, therefore the lactic acid system becoming predominant for a majority of the remainder of the rotation. At any stage during this phase, Norman has the ability to shift between energy pathways depending on the energy requirements. Specifically, Norman shifts back to ATP-CP for a one-off singular maximal effort, as shown in the video by him throwing an explosive cutout pass for his team to score a try. A prime example identified within the touch game is if Australia don't score, they continue to work under the same high-intensity efforts repeatedly for a set of 6 defensive touches, with the opposition driving the ball back through the middle of the field, forcing Norman to exceed his lactate threshold. Across these 2 sequences of plays, Norman has been on the field for an approximate duration of 1:17. Once they have pushed through and defended their set of 6, high levels of lactic acid have been accumulated, causing fatigue. Identified as a performance inhibitor of energy production, Norman is required to drive the ball to the sub-box, in which he makes a rotation beginning his recovery phase. When substituted off the field, his exercise period finishes, immediately shifting to the aerobic system as the dominant system to rebuild ATP molecules in the recovery phase. As Norman recovers and continues to work aerobically, he is under EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, simultaneously taking place is recovery of alactacid and lactacid components. Alactacid rapidly restores ATP and CP stores, as well as the replenishment of O2 for myoglobin surrounding tissues. Approximately 30 seconds is required for 50% and 2 to 3 minutes for 100%. Working concurrently is lactacid, which is slow in recovery time during the period. The short nature of recovery allows for the body to remove a percentage of lactic acid accumulated and negligible replenishment of some glycogen stores. 6 by dedicator allows middles to rotate 5 times in a half, the recovery enabling the middles to work at a high intensity repeatedly over the course of the game. A middles work to rest ratio is 1 to 2, with Norman evidently on the field for an average of 1:25 and off the field recovering for 3:12, which is a significant time period for the middles recovery to enable them to work repeatedly at high intensity efforts throughout the game. Prowse plays the wing position for the Australian touch football team, predominantly working off the ball. His primary goal is to create space and provide support for the middle and links. Specifically identified in the video when involved in play during the line attack phase, he receives a cutout pass from a middle to score a try. Prowse is predominantly working under aerobic conditions as the body does not exceed oxygen demands, shifting to the ATP-CP energy system when called upon to perform a short burst of high-intensity work. Due to working submaximally, the oxygen deficit phase is less and less recovery is therefore required, allowing wings to return to aerobic conditions effectively. Identified in the video as a wing player works at low intensity, creating space to then score a try. Each short burst of intense efforts are followed by submaximal periods in which the recovery time varies. Reflecting the work to rest ratio as 2:1, he spends 3 minutes 10 on the field with a rest period of 2 minutes 14, rotating off the field 8 times in comparison to a middle who rotates 10 times across the game. This enables for 2 periods of submaximal work with 1 period of rest, supported through the intensity of the wing player infrequently entering the lactic acid system, except for when he may have to ruck the ball upfield in order for the middle and links to effectively substitute. The lactic acid system contributes little to the production of energy if the recovery time is sufficient for a wing due to not exceeding the lactic threshold, as the submaximal exercise intensity allows for active recovery whilst on the field of some CP stores, with the oxygen requirements often not exceeding the energy requirements due to predominantly working submaximally. It's notable that 6 players are dedicated to substituting across the middle position, with 3 players devoted to the wing position. Similar times are recognised for both the middle and wing position with the replenishment of phosphocreatine and oxygen levels in the circulatory system. The middle position has 5 rotations compared to the wing, which spends longer out on the field with 4 rotations. Time spent in recovery is similar between the two positions, the middle with an average recovery time of 2 minutes 17 and the wing with 1 minute 30, but due to the nature of each position's intensity levels and the number of players dedicated to each position as well as their work to rest ratios, the wings have less rotations throughout the game. The recovery periods don't need to be as long or as frequent due to the short explosive efforts performed, reflected by the number of players dedicated. Gaining a deeper understanding following the interplay of energy systems in touch football, I participated in an amateur game completed by a Year 12 PE class. Displayed in the data profiles of both the Australian and our Year 12 game, the energy use is recognisably similar. It was evident that after the initial tap, I shifted to ATP-CP conditions for the explosive actions as seen in the video when I achieve a roll ball followed by a pass. The repeated high-intensity efforts require insufficient time to recover, therefore the lactic acid system becomes predominant with the ATP-CP system becoming exhausted. Lactic acid is doing approximately 45% of energy contribution during this stage. Responsibility to repeatedly drive the ball up the field or get defensive touches demanded an increase in muscle energy and the rate of energy supply from glycogen molecules, as I achieved 23 possessions in the first half with 3.43 touches each rotation as a middle. Following the insufficient oxygen demands, VO2 uptake had plateaued, nearing the maximal oxygen consumption, causing a decline in the intensity efforts able to be performed, as identified in the video. Repeatedly working under heart rate zone 3 and 2, it is evident that high intensity efforts required regular substitutions to allow for sufficient recovery time and the replenishment of ATP molecules under aerobic pathways. The fatiguing effects of lactic acid were evident through the high-scoring game, which resulted in me rotating 8 times throughout the game, with an average recovery time of 1 minute 30 per substitution rotating on after each try was scored. The time spent on field was an approximate 4 minutes 19, concluding to having an insufficient recovery time, which resulted in high levels of lactic acid accumulation. Analysing a wing player, I achieved significantly fewer possessions of the ball. As seen in the video, this was due to being positioned out wide, making space in a support role. Playing the middle position, it was measured that my average heart rate was 142 beats per minute, predominantly working under the lactic acid system. This further emphasises the differences in the interplay of energy systems when examining the contrast of the wing and middle position. When playing the wing position, the ATP-CP and aerobic system are the predominant energy system utilised. My average heart rate was 118 beats per minute, concluding that the energy requirements for the middle are substantially higher in comparison to when I play the wing position, with the data profile explicitly showing that I achieved 3 passes and 3 roll balls. Comprehensively, the difference between the contrasting positions of the middle and wing involve and require different energy systems to be predominant at different stages of playing the game. Through my experiences in our Year 12 PE game, similar comparisons can be made to the professional game and the work rate that was required for each position regardless of the standard of play.